Ghostwire Tokyo's entire narrative and gameplay revolves around the loss of a loved one, and the person dealing with overcoming that loss, whether it's a family member, overcoming bad habits, learning to overall accept that pain. I think Ghostwire's main theme to understand is that it's trying to tell the player from all side quests to even the main overarching missions that you must overcome and accept that loss. I believe that they're at the very beginning of Ghostwire Tokyo's development, and trying to understand the theme of loss begins with the very development of the game, with the ZeniMax team losing someone precious to them, Robert Altman, the chairman, co-founder, and as well as CEO of ZeniMax Media. Robert Altman passed away in 2021, and it destroyed the ZeniMax Media team from the inside out, and it was hard for him, his family, and as well as rest of his co-workers and colleagues to really truly let him pass on. Having death in his world was more of a byproduct, so the game director Kenji Kimura decided to focus this story and world of Ghostwire Tokyo on loss. That creeping gut-wrench feeling of knowing this person is now no longer in your life. Leaving some people with guilt, leaving some with sadness, and any other form of griefs. Everything regarding Ghostwire Tokyo focuses all on loss. From the main character's main willpower is saving his ill sister, KK losing his body and becoming a wraith, all of the Tokyo population vanishing, the main antagonist's whole mindset and point of him commencing his plane due to the loss that he is currently suffering. In this review, we will talk about the main theme about this game's narrative and the overall core gameplay loops players will expect to see about. This review will cover some story spoilers, so please back out now if you want to play the game for yourself and sit back and enjoy, because if you don't care about spoilers or you already have played this game, then you can stay for the ride. But let's move on to the overall review of the game and some of the gameplay aspects that you will come across, kind of still circling around the main theme of that loss. Ghostwire Tokyo is a horror first-person action-adventure game developed by Tango Gameworks and published by Bethesda. The game's premise sets players in the role of Akito, a motorcyclist on his way to go see his very sick sister. In the process, a man in a Hania mask enacts a Hyako Yako, which is an amalgamation of visitors, the game's main enemy you will come across. During Akito's wreck that he gets into, he practically dies, but is slightly revived by a wraith looking for a new body, and his name is revealed later on to be KK. This sets up the world as we run to go find our sister, and the very first thing that you will notice is that Tokyo is all covered in this deadly ghostly fog that helped in vanishing the population and whoever comes in contact with it. Already at this point, before you even play the game and get to actually controlling Akito, the game has already set that premise of loss already in a quite interesting way. Akito has already died, or he was in the process of dying. Akito was on his way to his practically dying sister named Mari. KK has already have died, and his last ditch effort was to turn into a wraith and take over a dead body to basically gain a corporeal form again to go take care of the man who took care of him, and the man in the Hananiya mask. The deadly fog has made most of Tokyo's population vanish, and it's our job to get them back. As an added touch, we realized during the first mission through Tokyo that the main antagonist actually wants our sister Mari that help complete his entire plan. With everything happening in front of us, we must work together with KK to take down the man in a Hananiya mask, save our sister, and as well as save the world. But, there's a huge but. Most of the time, the gameplay of Ghostwire Tokyo is rather engaging and quite an immersive experience, as thanks to KK we can use elemental powers through his elemental weaving, which sets us up into the combat portion of this review. You'll notice that all of Tokyo's citizens are completely gone. So your actual enemies is Japan's ghosts. Their folklore. These ghosts are quite interesting enemies. All of Japan is full of urban legends. Almost anything about them is an urban legend at this point. It's been an urban legend for hundreds of years. So we're gonna focus on the different visitors. In order to defeat these visitors, we must damage them with our ethereal powers thanks to KK, which consists of fire, wind, and as well as water-based attacks, which will open up their cores, which is pretty much the heart of that visitor, and we must destroy that core. Akito and KK has plenty of support items to help them against their battle with the visitors, and we have also access to the talismans as well, which acts as very great support items for the player. This basically can mean between stuns, creating more ether. Some can cause the visitors' cores to be easier to draw out and even blind the visitors to be able to sneak around them. Ether is a huge necessity to the player, as throughout your time playing, you would notice floating objects phasing in and out of reality. By attacking the color-specific objects, you'll gain more spell power or ammo, which will reward you for the specific element. The last support item is the prayer beads found at shrines, which basically gives Akito a permanent buff to his abilities as long as it's equipped onto you. While traveling, you will also notice dogs and cats, something that is kind of a common folklore or common thing about it is that animals like dogs and cats can kind of sense some form of, ethereal beings, some spirits and all that good stuff. They are a little bit more sensitive compared to most humans. That plays heavily in it, as well. You'll come across most dogs traveling around Tokyo. Some of them you can read their thoughts thanks to KK's abilities, and you can also feed them dog food, which if you feed them dog food, that can essentially get you more money. Or some of them can point you to yokai or onis that are spread around the map, and like I said, dogs are very sensitive to these things. Now, cats on the other end of that, they are still around as well, but they have taken over the stores to help sell Akito items. These act as more of salesman cats that I look at them, but they help sell items. We can get food, we can get other talismans, we can get other things that help us, fend off the visitors. You can also find food throughout the world, which is part real food and part ethereal food. Basically, between the both of them, they can actually help heal and boost the power of Akito. Some of them give, temporary buffs throughout your times, like having a perfect block counter, gets boosted. Some of them allow sneaking. There's a lot of other things that some of that ethereal food helps overall. The main RPG aspect of Ghostwire Tokyo is the skill tree, which helps level up Akito's main abilities, KK's ethereal weaving, and is helping increasing his performance with the bow, and you can also get improved carrying capacity on your items. But the main gameplay loop is the ghostly fog itself that surrounds a good chunk of Tokyo, and in order to get rid of it, we must cleanse the Torii gates so it can help disperse the fog. These gates are always heavily guarded, but once cleansed, you can actually fast travel from gate to gate to gate. Moving on to the main enemies of the game, let's talk about the visitors. Now, they come into two specific types. There's the common enemy types, and there is the special enemy types. The common enemy types are the ones you will come across plenty of times. They're kind of everywhere. The first one is being the rainwalkers. Now, these guys, at first, they look like Slenderman, and it's honestly the most creepiest thing. Like, you see them a lot, so they don't really work out too well. But rainwalkers are your common enemy type, which basically looks like Slenderman, but then we start to learn a little bit about that loss, right? So they are born from the exhaustive hearts of people who have, have become so exhaustive throughout their days of work that they're now their spirit, their ethereal spirit has now become a rainwalker. These are guys that are draped up in suits, holding umbrellas, and they're very creepy. Even though they're common enemy types, they come walking towards you in a very fastly manner. They're not really a threat up until they get up into a more of a personal, into a personal space. Then we have the Students of Miseries. Now, the Students of Miseries, and it's basically, keep in mind, a lot of these enemy types go play a lot into how, Japan, really their work ethics is when it comes to anything they do, whether you're in school, whether you're in a business, no matter what, their work ethics can be quite exhaustive in itself, in a very interesting way. Like, they really are very hard workers, but sometimes they don't always remember to, step back, relax, calm down. And this goes for most parts of the Asian culture. The Student of Miseries are the young schoolgirl ghosts who are born from anxiety alone. Now, these ghosts you'll see are basically draped in their schoolgirl outfits with no heads. They don't have a heads. Then you have the male counterpart, which is the Student of Pains. These guys normally are rocking like tracksuits. They're normally rocking, depending on what, like regular schoolboy outfits. Then we come across the Paper Dolls, which are women that are clad in like business outfits, but they are ranged ghosts who attack from afar, while the Marionettes, which are the healing aspect of these ghosts, where they can basically heal the enemies. So you gotta kind of take care of them first before all of the enemies get healed throughout the battle. There's the Wanderers, who they actively look like actual ghosts. It looks like something from Scooby-Doo. They got the white, they're floating in the air. They're very weak. Like, you can take care of them fairly quickly. They only shoot dark blasts from afar. There's nothing too threatening about these guys, but they do control the airways, so you definitely got to make sure you take care of them from afar. But the common enemy types is a little bit more, extensive, but we'll move on to the special enemy types. These guys are a little bit more on the crazier side of things. So the first enemy type is the Kuchisake, is the lady in a trench coat who carries a large pair of scissors. Now, when I first came across this enemy, I felt like I've seen this person before. It reminded me of a urban legend that I've seen a lot throughout Japan, where the lady wears a long hat, and she's very tall, like 6'10" type tall. Like, she's unnaturally tall, and she comes after you. The urban legend's a little bit, I can't remember fully, but if you guys remember the urban legend or know of what I'm thinking of, definitely let me know in the comment section below. We also have the Shine Dancers, which are ghosts with a creepy smile who are a more dangerous version of the Wanderer. So these are the guys who basically can levitate things. They deal a lot of damage and they hurt a lot. So then we have the Rain Slashers, which are a more dangerous variant of the Rainwalkers, and they essentially hold a giant blade and as well as an umbrella. Like I said, not too different. It's just a slight variant, but they definitely hurt a lot, especially if they get too close to you. You also get the Relentless Walker, which is the tank variant with a nasty hammer that you need to do a lot of damage just to take care of this guy. Normally, my main thing I would do is use my fire-based attacks that deal absurd amount of damage to be able to take care of them. Now, as I'm speaking about the enemy types, the common and the special variants, you'll notice that feeling of loss. A lot of these enemy types has a exact reason of why they became who they are. Like the Relentless Walker, his is born from outright rage, some rage of anything really. But I brought up earlier in the video that we can't escape that message in the entire game. Each visitor you come across, like I said, has a terrible backstory onto how they became a ghost, forever being stuck roaming the ethereal plains or Tokyo full of regret. Even one major gameplay mechanic is the severance of KK and Akito. That's another of loss. You feel hopeless. You feel like, oh no, I need KK. And you'll see this in their interactions with each other, because in the beginning they almost regularly hated each other. understandably, I mean, random dude enters your body type deal. I can see where Akito comes from, but like, hey, we both have a common mission, and they went from being two people who did not like each other and was just a nuisance for both sides of it to now we both need each other, and really brought open a great friendship between the two. But there are times that these two partners will get separated. And there's a specific mission where you have to go through that act of like, oh no, you lost KK for the very first time and you must go rescue him. And now later in the game, you come across a version of Akuchi Sake who can actively rip KK out of you. And now you have to fight her and gain KK back in the same process, becoming a gameplay loop because they're now actually able to take him out of you, and it becomes even more scary. So that's definitely where that horror aspect comes from, because crouching around with just a bow and arrow and not, be able to actively fight these visitors and how you normally would, they basically show like you became too reliant on KK. And even on KK, somebody as powerful as he became reliant on Akito as well, because if without each other, there is no other way we'll be able to take down the man in the Hanayea mask. Moving on forward with the feeling of loss, then we have ghosts that haven't truly passed over yet, which sets the game's side content up, or the distractions from the main mission. I can be the way you ride. So Ghostwire Tokyo's replayability is quite interesting, as most of the side content revolves around cleansing the gates, helping out the spirits through questing, or helping send the lost spirits by absorbing them with the Katashiro, which helps net you more experience points by transferring them through the telephone boxes to KK's friend Ed. And some spirits you are actually going to be trapped, so you'll need to use specific hand seals, which are cool hand signs you can do with the analog stick. And if you're not good enough, you can actually have KK do it. While in between doing side quests and main questing, or just grinding XP, once you complete chapter 2, you can start doing Spider's Thread, which is the game's way of completing levels of fighting visitors in a more combat heavy focus mode. This is essentially fighting a spider deity that has, trapped all of Japan. This is a separate game mode. This has nothing to do with the actively game mode, but in order for you to try it out, you have to beat chapter 2 in order to be able to play it. But I do want to talk about the graphics and as well as the sound design, because I feel like that actively plays a part as well. The graphics is incredible. It really helps bring the unsettling atmosphere, even the way they designed Japan completely. It feels like you're exploring literal parts of Shibuya. It's on the same level as playing any of the Yakuza games, like how they're able to just capture Tokyo, or Japan to be exact, and actually put it on game. The sound design of the visitors is outright terrifying. Anytime I came across, or I'm sneaking around and you just start hearing like these random like horrors coming out of these things' mouth, like just being near them, it just sounds so unsettling. And especially when you're listening to some of the special variants, it sounds even worse. Like, oh my god, the dev team did an outstanding job at capturing the sound quality. Like, there's not too much music that plays in. You can't play music through the in the pause menu when you're going through it, like as in musical tapes. But when you're playing a game, there's not much music that happens, and it's mainly just like this unsettling, damp quietness, the rainy streets of Shibuya, while hearing random, deathly sounds coming from some of the visitors. It definitely feels like you're in a horror movie. And the game isn't an outright horror game, but it definitely does have a lot of horror, spooky elements to the game that can really give you some good scares. Now, going back into understanding the story of loss. That Ghostwire Tokyo is trying to tell us. Throughout the game, story is circled around Akito's relationship with his sister Mari. Understanding the person inside of him, the player's main goal is to save her. The game flips that entire idea, slams it right on his head just before he actually gets to speak to her in the later, once you get to the final missions, like his entire point of view notice gets challenged immediately thanks to the masked antagonist Hananiya. He brings up if she will want to be saved, giving her condition. Now, at the very beginning of the game, she's bedridden, but due to Japan being, mostly lost to the ghostly fog, we don't really notice how bad her condition is. No, she was practically already dying, which calls Akito's mission into question, as well as how we, as the players, look at life. It's unexpected since we, as Akito does, often assume things are dead or dying, especially in regards to whether they would rather continue living or not. Game director Kimura said that the entire idea came from wanting to look into how conversations would go with people that we normally cannot reach. As he quotes, the ability of communicating with the paranormal or the inability to do so being blocked from doing so was a key thought that he had in mind, said Kimura. Like people who are not with us anymore, Mari in this case, those are still alive have to cope with that. So how would you talk to them? So it sheds a little light on it. If I was able to communicate with this person, what would be that conversation? And that alone, when I was currently reading about this game and understanding a little bit of things after, it really brings a lot to question of like when we try to save our loved ones when they're trapped in a hospital bed, stuck up to medicine tubes, and or they're in a coma and we're trying our damnedest and that they're not gonna make it. What is that conversation we have to have with them before their final moments? And we noticed this with Akito, and we noticed this during KK when some of his friends start passing away. And it's a lot of things we as people have to understand of like, do they want to continue suffering? Same thing even goes with animals. Like when dogs are so old that it's like, man, it's becoming sad now. Like, would it be best to let them continue on like this? Do we even know how they're feeling, especially if we can't speak to them? Like, it's a lot that will go through your head, and there's a lot that went through my head while playing this game. Once I beat the campaign and watched as KK and Akito starts to understand and overcoming the feeling of lost, watching Akito finally understand what his sister was thinking before saying his goodbye, watching our duo part ways with each other for good, the ending of Ghostwire truly finished the narrative off with having the player understand and overcome loss, having our characters understand and overcome loss. When I beat the game, it saddened me. Due to it, felt like the whole journey was honestly a slap in the face, but after understanding what the game has been trying to tell us, makes it all make sense now. As soon as the credits rolled, you're met with the tribute message about Robert Altman. Not only that, Suguro Murakashi had lost both of his parents during the development of Ghostwire Tokyo, and there's a brighter side of what comes from loss. Akito comes to terms with his inability to confront his parents' death and sister's conditions by telling them that he will start living his life, and you see this at the very end of the game during the final cutscene. Quote, even if it means of him feeling weak, he said this, he's like, I feel weak. Like, he had the power of KK to do everything. And with this journey he's been down, he now has a better mindset afterwards. Something Hananiya, our antagonist, could not accept. His whole point of doing all of this was to reunite with his dead family. And it's sad. It is very sad. Like, we finally have an antagonist, and it's not finally. We've always had different antagonists that have a good point or a good reasoning of why they do what they do. And after, playing throughout the chapters and trying to understand, and there are 6 chapters, by the way. They're pretty lengthy. It took me about almost 12 hours to beat. But throughout those 12 hours and throughout those 6 chapters, trying to understand what Hananiya is trying to do, you really start to realize like all he wants is his family back. Now, is the way that he's doing it is sick and twisted? Yes, because trying to destroy all of Japan and all of its citizens and enact this plan, it is a crazy concept, and he couldn't understand this concept. He did something outlandish and crazy just to get his loved ones back, which ended up spelling his demise overall, because we ended up beating him, and that plan ends up backfiring. But that feeling of loss has changed him for the better. Also, the feeling of loss has changed Akito for the better, giving him a brand new friend, KK, who's also grows by the time the credits roll, eventually succumbing to his mission and passing on, as well as leaving Akito with an experience to remember. Kimura goes to also explain in another interview, quote, that everyone vanishing in Tokyo is how KK meets Akito. Even though there is loss, there is also something new that is gained through encountering of new people, said Kimura. So it's not all about death, it's also about balance with positive things about life too. Now, this was my in-depth analysis review regarding Ghostwire Tokyo. I don't know what you guys think about the feeling of loss or this tragic loss, and what do you guys think about the overall narrative or overarching story about Ghostwire Tokyo. I don't know what you guys think about it. If you liked the review and you would like to see more reviews from me, then I definitely suggest checking out my recent review I made on Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth's demo as we get ready for its launch day in the next couple of weeks. I also want you guys to subscribe to the channel. I have more reviews. I have more news videos coming out for you guys. Let's bring in the new year. Happy New Year's. Happy 2024 for you guys. But as always, it's been your host, KSD TV, here at Chaotic Inc., signing out. Peace.
I don't sleep, that's so weak, don't plan to rest. I'm from a hood where you die if you don't pack a vest. No culinary degrees, but whipping crack the best. Chefing, hard times taught lessons. Praying every night to pull up in park Benzes. What's my home is what you call trenches. You wouldn't last a day seeing life through all lenses. It's all tension, no sun, and rain and plenty. Full-time job, still can never make a penny. I ain't rapping for clout.